term burnout. You may have in your various jobs heard secondary traumatic stress and vicarious trauma. Now, a lot of people think that this is all the same thing. It's actually not. There's three very distinct, oh, hold on. Sorry about that, Project Kilano. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a video that kind of talks about some of the things that we're going to talk about today, just kind of give you an overview of everything we are going to talk about. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand. I'm pretty informal, so if you need to clarify something or something, please let me know. So let's go ahead and watch this video. This was done by a group in Hawaii, which if you're going to do self-care, I think that's the best place for it, as far as I'm concerned. And they're going to talk about secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma, burnout, and they're going to touch on self-care as well.
Vicarious trauma is when a helping professional starts to experience trauma themselves by their close work with those who have been traumatized. And a particular social worker comes to mind who, after her work with youth who have been traumatized, started to experience sleeplessness, hypervigilance, tearfulness. She was having a traumatic response herself, and that's how it appears. Self-care is vitally important to the helping professional in order to reduce their level of stress. Activities can include anything that elevates your mood, like for me, I love to play the guitar. It can also include regular exercise or reliance on family and friends. Never underestimate the power of those relationships and what they can do for you. And this will allow helping professionals to sustain their work and even enrich it.
What happens is, with working in the social service field as social workers, the stories that we hear, the things that we see, the experiences that our clients go through can cause a lot of secondary trauma. It can cause staff to become burnt out. It could cause them to feel hopeless, to question the right and wrong. And so what happens is they develop kind of experience trauma effects as our youth do. So some of the things that we do to try and help decrease the chance of vicarious trauma is developing a self-care type of program within the project. So it's taking care of your colleagues, understanding what they may be going through, taking care of yourself, and implementing procedures and policies in your organization to address vicarious trauma.
So the first part of this I want to address is burnout. And burnout really results from overwork. It happens over a very long period of time. It's often associated with having too much on your plate at one time and trying to do everything. It's associated with a poor management response to staff. It can be associated with the lack of taking vacation time or using your vacation time, which in the United States is pretty common. In the United States, we actually take less vacation time than most developed countries over the world. It can lead to impaired decision making. I don't know if I've had this experience, maybe you have had a similar experience, where you're working at your desk and then all of a sudden you just cannot make a decision. You cannot make one more decision. You are done for the day. Sometimes it could happen later on in the afternoon. Sometimes it happens after a long work session. And that's the time when you really need to take a break. I often associate burnout. I like to associate these things with things that we can understand, like common things like a cell phone battery. So if you think about a cell phone battery, it works and works and works throughout the day. And then as it's working, it kind of gets lower and lower and lower. So what do? You need to stop and charge it and recharge. So that's kind of the same thing with burnout. As you're going through the day, you're kind of working and you're going and you're going and you're going, and your energy reserve is getting lower and lower and lower. So burnout can be mitigated with things like taking a vacation or stopping to take a break, talking with your coworkers, laughing. Sometimes I pop on the headphones for 5-10 minutes, just listen to some music, just to kind of disconnect. Unlike your cell phone, you disconnect to recharge. Vicarious trauma is also known as compassion or empathy fatigue. Like burnout, vicarious trauma happens over a long period of time. So it does happen over a long period of time. It's a more permanent change though, where burnout can be associated with it can be mitigated by just taking a short break. Vicarious trauma is actually, is not just easily taken care of. It happens over a long period of time, and it can actually result in a permanent change in the service provider. So these are things like starting to question why you're doing what you do, starting to question things like your lifestyle, or it really does impact all aspects of your life. It includes your body, mind, spirit, characters. It's much more pervasive than burnout because unlike burnout, vicarious trauma, like I said, can really affect all areas of your life. Sorry, I'm having a little difficulty with my clicker today. The true red flag, however, for vicarious trauma is the impact that it has on a person's worldview. So for instance, if you are normally very optimistic, very happy-go-lucky, you see the positive in everything, and suddenly you start to change to somebody who might be much more cynical, pessimistic, then people are going to notice that. And when that change starts to occur, that's a huge red flag for vicarious trauma. It can include things like changes in your spirituality, where if you might have been a very religious or spiritual person, suddenly you're not, or suddenly you're questioning. It can also include changes in identity, which is the way that you practice things that are associated with your identity. Changes in your beliefs related to your major psychological needs. So this is beliefs regarding your safety, control, sometimes your self-esteem, and intimacy. So one of the ongoing ways that we diagnose vicarious trauma is through kind of checking in with the people that you work closest with or you live closest with. When they are starting to notice these changes, that's when we know we may have a full-blown case of vicarious trauma going on. So secondary traumatic stress. Unlike vicarious trauma, secondary traumatic stress happens immediately. With vicarious trauma, you are exposed over a long period of time, okay, to multiple clients with multiple types of trauma. Secondary traumatic stress is working, for instance, working one-on-one with a client and hearing something traumatic from that client and actually taking on that client's trauma. So their trauma becomes your trauma, and you start to have effects or symptoms very much like the triggers that your client is having. So it's a much shorter impact, not as length of time, but impact on you right away. It happens right away. So I did mention that there's some similarities between burnout, vicarious trauma, and secondary traumatic stress. So as you can see, again, burnout is cumulative. It's usually over a long period of time. Vicarious trauma is cumulative, but it has individual symptoms. It's not just, all the stress happening at the same time. There's individual symptoms that go with it. It's much less predictable. Like secondary traumatic stress, vicarious trauma is much less predictable. It may or may not happen. With burnout, it's very predictable. Most people know that if they put too much work on their plate and they have too many things going on at one time, more than likely at some point they're going to hit that proverbial brick wall and they need to stop and take a break. Burnout, much more evident in a work situation, whereas vicarious trauma and secondary traumatic stress permeate home and work. You take that with you. All three of these can lead to health problems, which we'll get into in a little bit. There's a lot of different, maybe with burnout you might have a lack of motivation, where all the way up to secondary traumatic stress, you're going to have symptoms of PTSD very similar to what your client is experiencing. Again, it's kind of that empathic, you are going to take on their trauma. Those triggers, again, with burnout, there's really no evidence of a trigger, whereas secondary traumatic stress, you're having triggers, again, that are very similar to your clients. And the remedy for each is is, well, burnout, obviously, it's taking time out to take breaks, taking a vacation, positive changes in the work environment. With vicarious trauma and secondary traumatic stress, the remedy is often the treatment of the self, similar to trauma treatment, so right up to therapy. There's different individual risk factors for all three of these types of trauma or secondary trauma. Obviously, your personality and your coping style. If you're a person who can handle pressure easily and can take on and multitask really well, you're probably not going to be as affected by vicarious or secondary trauma or burnout. Your current life circumstances, what are you going through at the moment? You know, a lot of people have different life circumstances. We may outside the home be going through a tough time with our spouse or our children. And we try not to, but we're human beings and we're gonna take stuff like that home with us. Your work style, again, if you're the type of person who can take on a lot, or if you're the type of person who feels they need to take on a lot, you're going to be much more vulnerable to secondary traumatic stress if you feel like you have to get everything done at one time. Your personal history also is going to play a role in this. What sort of traumatic experiences have you had in the past? Some things might trigger you more than others. So really having a good knowledge of what your triggers are can really help mitigate the sensation of secondary traumatic stress. Work risk factors, your role at work. If you're not exposed to clients as much as others are, your risk for this is going to be much less. So for instance, I'll use myself as an example. I do two different jobs, as you heard Stephanie said. I do marketing, but I also do this de-stress training. So I am not exposed as much as some of our other folks at the center are. So for instance, the LACs, the LCPCs, and the therapists are obviously much more exposed to the clients. The folks that work with our Chafee program or Second Chance homes, they are having that direct one-on-one contact with the clients. They are going to be much more at risk than somebody like me who is in the office and may see a client from time to time, just through the hallways or something like that. My risk of exposure is much less than somebody who's going to work one-on-one. Obviously, the work conditions are going to play a huge factor in this. Workplace, how things are managed. Are you encouraged to take breaks? Are you encouraged to do self-care? Are you encouraged to take a day off now and then when you need to? Take those mental health days, as we like to call them. So the way that your work is structured, the work conditions are structured, are going to be a huge factor in this. And also culture. We all process differently through a bunch of different filters, but including our culture. The resources that we have at large in the community, are you able to get the help that you need? Unfortunately, in Montana, we don't have a lot of service providing out here. We're kind of underserviced in this area. But if the resources are out there, they're definitely going to, definitely being taken advantage of them. So here is a list of possible emotional symptoms of all three: secondary traumatic stress, burnout, and vicarious trauma. They're all going to kind of mix in. Not one person is going to have all the same types of emotional symptoms or the physical symptoms, which I'll show you here in just a second. Obviously with burnout, irritability, moodiness, but that can stretch across the entire spectrum. A lot of these, like cynicism, you're going to lapse into that the further along the spectrum you get. Absences from work, mental lapses, stuff like that, all of that can happen with all three of these, but they're much more apparent with secondary traumatic or vicarious trauma. So these are the possible physical symptoms. Again, we're all individuals. We're all going to receive and perceive things differently. So again, not one person is going to have the same type of physical symptoms. Other people might be more susceptible because of their physical condition at the time. Again, it can go anywhere from anxiety to stomach aches to right to the big stuff. In workplaces where things are on the left-hand column here, you see higher risk, where these things are in place, this type of work situation is going to be much more at risk of their workers developing a burnout, secondary traumatic stress, or vicarious trauma. Where there's no tolerance for mistakes. We tend to be on our guard all the time, right? Hyper-vigilant of making those mistakes because we know if we do, what's gonna happen, right? Oh no, oh no, oh no. Whereas if you make a mistake and the higher ups are saying, well, it's a learning experience. What did you learn from this? Then you're going to be much more relaxed in the way that you approach your work, right? Communication is huge in workspaces between management, upper management and staff. Making sure those lines of communication are open are going to work a long way towards keeping your staff kind of relaxed and less prone to burnout or trauma. You never know when you might be in trouble. I don't know, we've all kind of maybe worked for somebody like that who we don't know, maybe their rules change from time to time, they don't tell us, or something happens, everything's unpredictable, and you're always afraid of making that wrong move, right? Well, when you know what the rules are, when things are clearly communicated and there are no surprises, imagine how much more relaxing that could be in working in an environment like that. So there are several protective factors with secondary traumatic stress, burnout, and trauma. The first one is being self-aware. So when you are aware of your own triggers, when you are aware of things that make you stressed out, when you are aware of your workload, a lot of times we don't realize sometimes when we look up from that pile of work just how much we've done. And when you can be aware of things like that, that can help you kind of know, okay, I need to step back, I need to take a break, I need to let things go. Being able to ask for help and receive help. That's a big one with us. I think Montana is kind of what I call bootstrap country, right? We pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, we cowboy up and we let it, we get to work, right? Sometimes we need to stop and say, whoa, I'm getting burned out here. I have way too much on my plate, or I'm noticing these shifts in attitudes. Things are changing in my life. I need to stop and reassess and maybe get some help. There's nothing wrong. I want to emphasize that there is absolutely nothing wrong with asking for help. And there's also nothing wrong with receiving help if somebody offers it to you. And with some certain work styles, those who feel that they have to get everything done at the same time, a lot of times we get overwhelmed, and we have coworkers who are generous and say, hey, let me help you with that. Take it. If they give you that opportunity and you know you're at that point where you're starting to get burned out, take the opportunity to say please or thank you. Yes, could you do this for me? Your work-life balance. How many of you unwittingly take work home with you? You don't even realize you're doing it. And I'm not talking about packing up your computer and getting all your paperwork and putting your folder in your purse and all that good stuff, or suitcase or briefcase for you guys. I'm talking about unwittingly taking work home with you up here. Sometimes there's situations at work that we cannot let go of. And we tend to take that home, and it tends to kind of weave itself into our lives, and it begins to that stress response going. So it's very, very important that we do the best that we can. Again, we're all human beings. We try, and sometimes we're not going to be as great at it as other times. But trying to leave work at work and home at home. For instance, I had many, many years ago, I worked for Color 8 Television, and I had a boss. He was amazing. And I used to talk to him about work-life balance. This was my first real big full-time job, and I used to talk to him about, well, how do you not take this stuff home with you? And he told me, on my way home, there's a stoplight. And whenever I get to that stoplight, I say, this is where work stops. This is where I am going to leave all of that stuff that I went through, the department head meeting and all that stuff, I'm going to leave that right there. And when I come back in the morning, it'll be there, and I can pick it up. And then when I come back, on my way back to work in the morning, I can leave my home stuff there if I want to. And it helped him. So being able to find that balance between, okay, I've worked enough, it's time to put that away and go home and enjoy a night on the couch with your significant other or whatever, or your four-legged friends or whatever you need to do. Just making sure that you have that in balance. Your personal self-care plan, we're going to talk about that. We're going to do a lot of work on a self-care plan today. So having a personal self-care plan in place for those times when you know you're starting to get a little, having that stress going on, a lot of this can be mitigated if you find it at the burnout stage. So having that personal self-care plan, oh, okay, I know what's going on. this is what I need to do. I'm going to go pamper myself, or I'm going to go take a break and I'm going to go do something I really like to do. I'm going to go read a book, or I'm going to go and do a puzzle, or color in. I have a coloring book at my desk. I actually stop and color from time to time when I know it's getting too much. So just having the personal self-care plan in place. Being open to learning and growing. Now this is not just, oh, I'm going to take this college course, take this course, get this certificate. It's things like looking for new opportunities within your job, learning new or getting more responsibility within your job, and then being open to taking on some things, again, with balance. But it's also being open to saying, you know what, I would love to be able to learn this, and going to your boss and saying, hey, I would really like to get a certificate in mindfulness-based stress reduction. Would that be okay? Could we do that? Looking for those opportunities to really stretch and grow. And obviously exercising your brain, learning something new every day is a huge benefit. Being optimistic. Now that seems like a no-brainer, but here's some trivia for you. Optimistic people not only have longer lifespans, they actually also have healthier relationships. People who are optimistic, obviously they also tend to live longer, they tend to be healthier. A sense of optimism can do a lot of things just within your body. To keep yourself optimistic means to keep yourself healthy. It can do a lot, obviously, for mental health as well. Being able to set boundaries at work and at home. That's not always easy, is it? We have, from time to time, we do let people cross our boundaries. We kind of have to sometimes with our jobs, but being able to say, you know what, I am sorry, I would love to be able to help you with this project, but right now I've got X, Y, and Z on my plate. I can't do it. And setting those boundaries, or saying things like, you know, I will let you go this far with this. Being able to, but you're not going to go any further than that. Being able to really have those lines in the sand. And that's really good, not just at work as well, obviously, because we don't want to be taking on too much, but also at home with your relationships, not just with your spouse, but with your family. I mean, we all, a lot of us do have those family members that kind of try to cross those lines from time to time. It's very healthy to say, you know what, I will put up with up to here. And after you cross that line, no. Keeping yourself sane and keeping people at that line is a very good protective factor, and it kind of helps keep you calm. An expression of feelings. Now I should have put the word healthy here. Obviously, having a healthy expression of feelings, getting things off your chest, and being able to vent and talk to somebody who is non-judgmental, who will just listen and say, I understand, and sometimes just sit there and go, Sometimes just having that person to do that helps a lot. And again, being able to express this in a healthy manner means being able to talk about it when it happens and thinking things through. So sometimes maybe it's not always best to just out with something. Maybe take it to somebody you trust first and process it through. And compassion satisfaction, meaning that everything is clicking, everything is going right, you enjoy what you're doing, you enjoy the people that you're working with. And positive work relationships. With my work with the De-Stress Grants, I have a coworker, Michelle, who is amazing. She sits 3 feet behind me. And I know she's got my back, and I know there are a lot of people that I work with also who have my back. Having those types of connections and those relationships at work can go a long way, because not only will they be there to help you through a project that you might have, or you might have too much work on your plate and you're able to delegate if they can help, but it also helps if you need to, like, I need to go outside and take a walk and talk about this. Will you just listen to me for 5 minutes while we walk around the block? Really helps to have those allies in place. And having a client-centered practice. A lot of times in the social service realm, there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes that can affect employees. There could be things like changes in management, budgetary problems, things like that. They can affect the staff as well. Making sure that the staff can work effectively and keep those in the background. Let's talk about developing a self-care plan. So this is where kind of the meat of this presentation is. I really enjoy helping people kind of facilitate their self-care plan. So the first thing I always tell folks is that self-care is very much like planning a trip. First of all, it's not the destination, it's the journey, okay? Self-care plans are like building a roadmap. When you take a trip, you know where you're gonna go, and you know how you're gonna get there. But you obviously are going to plan for things along the way. So you may be planning for things like detours, potty stops. For me, snack runs. I got to have that, you know, mid-Montana snack. I got to stop somewhere like in Butte or Missoula to have a snack. But so as you're planning that roadmap and planning those things, that's what you're planning for with a self-care plan. You're really wanting to plan for things like an immediate exposure to a traumatic event. You want to plan for those days where things are just not clicking. You might be a little burned out. What are you going to do? So we're going to talk about that, but again, the most important part of the journey is just to keep going with it. First thing I'd like you to do, you have those handouts. The first one is called, Is Your Lifestyle Causing You Stress? So I would like you, if you could, to just take a couple of minutes to fill that out. And the left-hand column is sort of those negative aspects of self-care. The right-hand column is more the positive aspects of self-care. So this sheet will kind of show you where you are currently, kind of where your balance is. So when you're putting together your self-care strategies, remember that it's across a broad spectrum. Not only do you have to take care of the personal stuff, like you see up here, you also need to take care of the professional stuff. So that balance, those boundaries, and making sure that you're replenishing yourself during the day, taking breaks, things like that. Because everything is connected. Body, mind, spirit, work, home, all of that stuff is interconnected, okay? If something is out of whack at home or at work, it can affect us physically, it can affect us mentally. So because everything is connected. So we want to make sure that when we're putting together a self-care plan, we're doing things that nourish all 5 of these aspects. Okay, second sheet is your self-care assessment. And these are things that you may already be doing. You're just going to kind of grade yourself on them. Things that you may be doing, these ideas on the sheet, if you're not doing them, may inspire you. And you also have a little space to write down things that aren't listed that you might be doing. So we have really normalized workplace stress in the United States. It's something that is just part of the mainstream. We don't even think about it anymore. Workplace structures have changed over time. We're often doing more with less. We're not taking the vacation time that we're given. There's also a lot of outside pressures in this day and age. So we're going to take a few minutes. I'm going to show you some basic self-care techniques. But I wanted to show you these statistics because when I read them, they about bowled me over. $125 billion a year is lost in productivity because of workplace stress. And that includes absenteeism, healthcare costs, oftentimes replacing an employee, because as you know, it's more expensive to replace an employee than it's expensive to do that. So a lot of times that's rolled into the cost as well. And then 122,000 deaths a year can be attributed to stress. So that's things like heart conditions or strokes from stress. So there's a lot of different aspects of the stress response that could be fatal. So we want to try and prevent this, obviously, as much as we can. Did you get enough sleep last night? How did you sleep? Did you sleep okay? Because there's a lot of benefits to sleep. First of all, sleep can help spur your creativity. And because the better you sleep you get, during our sleeping, the process of sleep, we're processing memories. And once we process those memories, it really helps kind of spur our creativity along. So making sure that you get enough sleep is very, very good. When you sleep well, if you have good sleep, actually sleeping well can help you lose weight. I did not know this, but it's actually true. So the better you sleep, the better off you are if you're trying to lose a few pounds. That, in turn, will keep you healthier. Here's some good sleep hygiene tips. Be sure to avoid caffeine and other stimulants at least 2 hours before you go to bed. Making sure that you're turning your bedroom into a sleep-friendly place. So first of all, keeping your bedroom for sleep only. And making sure that you have a nice, dark, cool environment. Some studies I read recommended 70 degrees, some 73. It all just depends what your comfort level is, but cool and dark are generally better sleeping conditions. Keep your evening meals light so that you're not going through a heavy digestion process right before you go to sleep, right? So making sure that you're eating lightly, avoiding those stimulants, and having a pre-sleep routine that's very soothing can often help as well. You know, if you're the type of person, if I take a hot bath before I go to bed, I'm not getting to sleep for at least another 2 hours. So things like, you know, reading a book or listening to soothing music or whatever you need to do to help kind of lull that feeling of sleep coming on, do it. Therapy is very, very beneficial, especially, first of all, it's going to help you express those feelings that we talked about earlier. It's going to help with that healthy emotional expression. Therapy is also a way to set time for yourself so that you can process things that are going on in your life. It's someone who can listen to you objectively and without judgment. And your therapist can provide you with the support that you need, and oftentimes can provide you with some ideas of how to work through things that are going on, not only in your life, but also with your work. You know, sometimes when you talk to your therapist, I've got this project, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. The therapist can kind of give you tips to help you be less overwhelmed or how to structure your workday. And this goes without saying, healthy eating. I know we hear about it all the time, diet, exercise. But getting the right nutrients and minerals for your body can go a long way in helping with mental health. First of all, it's a stress response. I'm guilty too, I'm a human being. We stress eat. How many people here stress eat? Yes, my drug of choice is chocolate. I will eat chocolate-covered anything when I'm stressed out. You could put a bowl of chocolate-covered broccoli in front of me, and I would probably eat it if I was stressed out enough. Really, if I'm that desperate for chocolate, I will eat it. But sometimes we have that response. We're human beings, so diet, exercise is not going to be perfect all the time. Self-care is not being perfect. Self-care is just doing the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. So if you're not perfect all the time with healthy eating, don't worry about it. But making sure you're getting the food that you need at the scale that you need it in. Obviously, we want high fiber, carbohydrate-rich foods like sweet potatoes, because things like sweet potatoes actually help in the production of serotonin, which is one of those feel-good brain chemicals, right? So the more serotonin we have, the better off we are. Fresh fruits and vegetables are always on the menu, of course. They help fill us up faster so that when we are stressed out and we're not hungry, we won't eat, right? Okay, maybe not. I don't know. Obviously, as I said before with sleep, cutting back on caffeine is very, very good as far as that diet exercise thing goes. Caffeine is wonderful, but it has a half-life of 6 hours. So if you have a lot of caffeine in your system and you become stressed out, what's going to happen? You could get those jitters, those anxiety response. It's really not good to do that late afternoon boost of that Mountain Dew or that coffee. It can last you nearly till bedtime if that happens. So limiting that caffeine intake is going to really help you, first of all, feel better and sleep better. But it's also going to help reduce those jittery feelings and that crash at the end of the rush. Exercise, I know. Everybody says diet, exercise, right? Now, exercise does not necessarily mean getting up at 5 in the morning, slugging off to the gym, working out for an hour, coming home and slamming down a protein shake. No. Exercise can be things like gardening for half an hour, going for a walk, playing with your kids, going to the park and running around with your kids. It can be cleaning. Some people find that relaxing. I'm not one of those people. But anything that gets you moving, doctors recommend a half an hour of movement a day. Any type of movement will work. If you are the type who likes to go dancing, dancing is a perfect exercise. It's aerobic, it's physical, you could get a lot out of it, and you could do it in your living room. It doesn't cost you a gym membership. You could just turn the music on and dance like nobody's watching and hope to God nobody is. Also, exercise is really good for stress reduction, because when you are exercising, I know for me, when I go to the gym and I'm on that treadmill or I'm on that elliptical or I'm lifting, I am not thinking about the problems at hand. I'm thinking about, oh my God, this is heavy. I don't want to do this anymore. I got to do one more rep. I'm not thinking about, oh, I forgot to write that check. Oh, we got to pay for this. Oh, this is going on at work. I'm thinking about I'm just in the moment. And being on that treadmill and pounding out those problems can help that stress just kind of work itself out, right? For me, my stress reduction is Taekwondo. No. It helps sometimes when you can kick that imaginary stress right out the window. At least that's what I'm picturing when I do it. Okay, maintaining social support, it's very important because it helps ease psychological stress, it helps enhance your immune function, and many of us face situations in our workday that we may not be able to talk about with friends and family, especially in the social work realm. If you're working one-on-one with clients, we're bound by HIPAA. There's a lot of things that we can't talk about. So maintaining social support within the work structure is very important. But when you get home and you can talk with your spouse, or you have an amazing group of friends that you can process things through with, it helps as long as you're not talking about clients, but you're talking about other things to help you kind of process that. Having that social support and knowing you've got folks who've got your back can be so important in helping you get through the stressful situations. And also the feeling of social isolation at work can lead to secondary traumatic stress and burnout. So when you have those people who've got your back, it can really mitigate that. Personal stress reduction. Now this could be anything that's meaningful to you that helps make you feel relaxed. For me, it's things like hanging out with my friends on the weekend and playing music together or singing together. It can be anything though. If taking walks makes you feel relaxed, do it. If painting or art makes you feel relaxed, do it. Anything that helps you feel and helps you breathe just a little bit is beneficial. So go ahead and do that. So now I'd like to talk about mindfulness. I have a short video. I realize we're running out of time, but let me show you this video because I think it's really good at explaining what mindfulness is all about.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. So I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, and now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower and one that is accessible by you immediately.
I just love that. It just explains it so well. So mindfulness is really about being in the moment. Mindfulness is good for just taking a break and stepping out if you feel yourself getting a little too overwhelmed by everything that's going on. To just sit quietly with your thoughts for just a few minutes and not engage with your thoughts like it said on the video. It's really more like, I liken it to closing my eyes and watching as thoughts go by like clouds, and just like, oh yeah, I'm angry about something. Okay, yeah, there that goes. Oh, I am anxious. Okay, there that goes. And just kind of sitting with it and being in the moment with it. Mindfulness has been found to, mindfulness practices have been found to increase gray matter in areas of the brain that have to do with stress and stress reduction. Mindfulness can actually enhance relationships. Couples that meditate together often are much happier. And mindfulness obviously can lead to a reduction in anxiety, depression. They've actually done studies with men who are in prison, and mindfulness and having them establish a mindfulness practice has actually reduced their recidivism, I can't say that word. It actually kind of helps them kind of work through things that they're going through their mind, and it can actually lead to them leaving the system permanently. So my advice is just be in the moment. Creating a self-care plan, we've got about 5 more minutes. With you, you have in your packets this diagram here that looks like this. And if you want to take just a couple of minutes to kind of get yourself started with it, this is what it should look like at the end. This is my self-care plan that I take. I have it right on my desk. I also have a copy of it at home. So it's things like things that you can do for your mind. For me, I like to read, I like to take classes, I like to go to the museum. I think that's very nurturing. Belly dance, so for your body, I like to do things like body dance. I go to the gym, I do taekwondo. I started to do Zumba when I did this, and then I realized I'm the most uncoordinated person on the face of the planet, so Zumba just was not going to cut it. Zumba was actually more stressful for me than it wasn't doing its job. And then things that you can do to nurture your spirit. For instance, for me, meditation and prayer is very important. Spiritual retreats, I walk, there's a labyrinth at St. Andrews on 24th, it's right behind there. I often go there and just kind of walk through the labyrinth and just process things. All of these things. Then having goals, my martial arts instructor says if you have goals, you'll never pass away. Now I don't know if you'll ever physically pass away, or he's just saying keep yourself so busy you don't have time to pass away. But having goals is really important. And I'm still working on the write a book thing. That's kind of some goals there I have. But also having a list of people that you know you can turn to in an emergency right away. So those supportive people in your life. I have several of my friends listed. I have way more than I could list, and I'm lucky that way. But just having this, so this is a self-care plan that you can put together on your time and kind of think it through, because we are running out of time. I apologize for that. Finally, having an emergency self-care plan is very, very important. A lot of times, especially in the social work profession, we might be exposed to something that really gets us in the gut right away. We may hear about a client going through a tragedy, we may see something happening with a client, and it's very, very important to have a plan in place for emergency self-care. Now this plan, which you have in your handouts, this plan includes things like 3 things that you know you can do right away to take care of yourself, whether it be take a walk, listen to some music, just find a coworker to process the event through with, things like that. It can also mean, there's also on the list, people that you might want to avoid when you're triggered. Because there are people in our lives that we might not necessarily want to mingle with when we are feeling stressed out. And those people who are negative, who may have a cynical kind of afterbite to them, those are people that you don't necessarily want to be around. Places that you might want to avoid when you're triggered. I know for me, there's 2 places that I really need to avoid. First one is holiday, because it has chocolate. The other one is Target, because when I'm triggered, I tend to shop. Sorry, didn't realize my laugh was having that effect on the microphone. But definitely those 2 places for me. So if there might be places for you that you definitely don't want to go when you're feeling triggered, just for your own self-protection. So having that emergency care plan in place is very important. It's almost like doing a fire drill. We do fire drills so that we can be ready for an emergency, right? So we want to work through an emergency self-care plan so that we can also be ready for those times when things get a little sketchy and out of hand. So does anybody have any questions? I realize I've been talking all hour. Okay. Well, there's my contact information. I will be there. We are taking a video of this. We will be editing that together, and I will be sending this out as a constant contact for those of you who are on the list. I will have all of the handouts and also a copy of this presentation here for you. If you don't have any other questions, I'll just say, first of all, thank you very much for being here, and I appreciate it so much. Thanks for your attention. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you got something out of this.